In this lesson, we're going to cover how to build an IK spine for our character rig. The file I'm starting with, you'll notice I've already got the arms built. It has both the FK and IK controls in there. We can switch them over here. And the leg's already built. You could start from just a skeleton or have these already built. Doesn't really matter what order you add them in. But that's just what I'm starting with. So if you're wondering what's going on here, that's what's built so far. So what we're going to do is add an IK spline to this. If you go up to Skeleton, IK Spline Handle tool, it's kind of like an IK handle, but it's a little bit different. It uses a curve to control how the spine is going to bend. So we're going to add one of those to this guy and then add some controls to drive that. I'm going to do a little trick here to make sure I ensure that my joints are zeroed out. I'll explain as I'm going, but just first thing I'm going to do is unparent the arms and the legs. Whoops, Shift P. So I'm holding capital P or Shift P to unparent those from the spine. Just because I'm going to do some stuff that may shift the position of the spine as I'm doing it. And I don't want it to move the arms to legs. Actually, I'm going to do the same for the head here also. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my mesh so it's out of our way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over into the side view here. Looks like I have my joints turned off. There we go. And I'm going to build a curve that, let me turn off my grid so you guys can see a little bit better too. A curve that follows up along the spine, but it's not going to start at the first joint, it's going to start at the second one. And it's going to stop at the base of the neck, which I think is about there. Let's turn on polygons real quick. Yeah, that's about the base of the neck there. Okay, so I'm going to go into Create, CV Curve tool, and open up the options. And I want to make sure I'm on a cubic curve, not linear. I want this curve to be nice and smooth. And just for starters, a little bit of background on the back. The amount of joints here is kind of more for a game rig where the amount of joints you use is limited. If you're doing something like a film rig, you could use a whole lot more joints in here. They start to tend to mimic the actual number of vertebrae in a back, depending on how realistic you need it to get. But for our purposes, this is enough. But what we're going to do with this spline is pretty much the same no matter what you're doing. So if you do happen to be doing something a little bit more along the lines of film, more joints are fine. But if you are doing a game rig, I recommend something fairly limited like this, where it's only 5, 6, 7 joints, not too many. Okay, so for reasons I'm going to get into in a minute, I'm not going to start down here at the base. I'm going to start one joint above, and I'm going to hold down V, and just also I am in the side view here, so I'm in a straight on side, right side view. And hold down V and point snap to that first point. I'm going to click just a little bit above, and I'm not exactly tracing this spine. I know, kind of get a rough idea how the curvature is going to build out as I click out these first 3 points. So I'm trying to match the overall curvature of the spine, but I could go and redo this and point snap later. So, well, let me build my spline here and kind of explain what's going on. I'm trying to get about 3 points overall for the back, the upper back, the chest. So 1, 2, 3 up here, and about the same down here. You may notice the top part is a lot more spread out than the bottom part. And that's mostly just because we do a whole lot more bending down here than we do up in the chest. You have a rib cage, it keeps you fairly rigid up here. It does have a little bit of bending to it, but not nearly as much as down here. So, it's still, but just greater coverage of area between the two. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my curve just a little bit. And what I'm looking at is where this line is hitting, and I'm going to try to just eyeball it as much as possible right into the center of the joint. I can move these side to side, up and down, whatever gets in a position. I'm not too worried about the actual CV's positions, as long as it's just a nice S-curve. And actually, I don't want this to bow out too much in the front, so I'm going to pull this back a little bit. Alright, happy with that. And now this one isn't quite hitting, so I'm going to do the same thing here. And that's really the only joint for the upper chest. And yep, when I move this. So this will be a little bit of a back and forth process if I'm moving this point and this point, because the line kind of averages out between those points. So I'll move just a little bit. Okay, close enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. You won't be able to get it perfect. And this is about to show you why I'm going to why I'm unparenting everything. And actually, just to be sure, I'm going to unparent this from the base hip joint here. So, okay, so I'm going to jump back in my perspective view because it's a little bit easier to see. And I'm going to build my Ik Spline now. So, skeleton, Ik Spline handle tool, and I'm going to go to the options. So let me reset these. So by default, you have all these options checked on. We have root and curve, which means that I believe it's going to either build the curve starting at the root or parent it under there. I'm not sure which of the two. I can't recall. Auto parent curve. No, auto parent would parent it under there. So that we're going to check off and not have on. And auto create curve. The Ik Spline handle tool can automatically create that curve that we just made, but I'd rather make my own so I can kind of control where those CV points hit. If we have it create, I have no control over where those points are going to be placed. I can control how many they're going to be, but I'd rather just click it out myself and have a little bit of control over how that's going to fall off. Okay, so I'm happy with those options, and once we do that, we can start building. So those things are checked off, and really, let's go back in there. The only thing I have checked on is root and curve. That's it. So I'm going to click my first joint in my chain. So just clicking the edge of the ball, trying not to hit the spline here. And zoom out, and I'm going to go up top, click on the end of my chain where the curve ends. And I'm going to click my curve, and I got a spot here where it's sticking out, so that's easy to click. If you can't click yours, just go and hide joints for that last click and then do your final click. So now what's happened is these joints are riding on top of this curve. So if I go and edit this curve, so I'm going to move the points around, the spine sticks to it now, which is great. That's what we want. What we don't want is it had to slightly rotate everything to get it to ride right on top of that curve. And this is just me, again, being anal retentive and going, hey, I don't want any rotations on my spine. So the easy fix is just rebuild it. We could try to freeze transformations, but we get into some little bit of fudging there. So, it's not hard to rebuild these joints. So we're just going to trace what we have here. And let's see, I'll just start at the base, and I'll delete that first one again. I don't think I actually need to do that, but just in case I'm wrong for some reason I can't think of. And I'm building all the way to the head again, just so we get that last joint oriented. And I'm going to click W to move back to my move tool, and it's created, but again we have to orient our LRAs. And I'm just going to shift click my leg here so I can kind of remember how these were. So Y is over to the side. If this chain is going down, but if we flipped it 180 degrees back up, Z would be facing backwards, not upwards. So we're going to do the same with all these LRAs to get them facing consistently. So I'm going to go back and turn on my discrete rotate here. Got it set to my default 30 degrees. Again, you could set it higher. It's just what I like, so I can kind of see when it's moving. It's a bigger jump trying to get it to go 90 or 180. So that looks good. Okay, I'll fix the other side here. Okay, so we have consistent LRAs again that are matching what we've done with the rest of our rig. And let's see, I'm going to go through and pick walk up. I'm going to unparent that because that's an extra joint that I don't need. I'm going to go and delete that extra joint and do the same thing up here on top of the neck. I don't need two head joints. Okay, so now I have a spine that's oriented the same way, and I've just got to name everything again real quick. So CL spine A joint, and I'm just going to copy that, paste it in, and just change the A to B to C, and so on. Oh, I need to delete the old one first, because we've duplicated it, we've recreated it, we don't need it anymore. And that IK handle is going to go with it, because there's nothing for it to drive anymore. And delete that one off of there now. And B, C, D, E. Okay, so we've got a new spine. So you may be wondering why we rebuilt it. Well, when we attached the first spine, it slightly adjusted everything to fit to that curve. Then we rebuilt that spine, tracing that spine that had been repositioned. So in theory now, we should have a zeroed out spine that's got its LRAs oriented, that's right on top of this curve that we built. And when we add the Ik spline again, it won't have to reposition itself. It'll be completely zeroed out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I don't need to go into options this time because I already set them. It should be set to the same options. And click on the base, click on the end of the neck, and add the spline. There we go. Now, when I go and look at my joints, zeroed out, whoops, let's see, pick walk down, not right. Zeroed out, zeroed out, zeroed out, zeroed out. Great, I got my spine, that's perfect. And don't have to worry about it now. So I'm going to go ahead and parent this back to this joint again. And so now we want a way to start to be able to move those CVs. Oh, I'm going to name my stuff here. So CL spine. I use CRV for any curves like this that I build that are part of my rig. So it'll stand for curve. And CL spine Ik spline. There we go. Alright, so we've got those named, we got all those pieces. Okay, so we need to start making clusters, and clusters will help us drive these. Again, when I move the CVs of this curve, it's driving the position of the rig. But we can't go in component mode every time we want to move these. So what we're going to do is select the bottom half, like I've got here. So I've got the bottom three that I made for the lower half of the body. You go up to Create and Cluster. And a cluster is a handy little tool that's kind of like grouping for sub-objects or components of a mesh. So you could grab a bunch of vertices, add a cluster, and now you can move those vertices, or in this case we're grabbing CVs, and we move this cluster now. It's moving all three of those CVs. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the upper three CVs that I have left now. So I got 1, 2, 3 there. I'm going to hit G, which will do the last command that I just did, which was create deformer cluster. Just a shortcut hotkey. And again, I'm going to name these. So we'll call this CL hips. Just going to call it a cluster. Actually, I'm going to abbreviate this to CLS. Okay. CL chest, CLS. Okay. Whenever I can, I try to think of some three-letter abbreviation for this. Ik spline, I just kind of leave like that, so I know it's that one offshoot that happens to not be regular Ik. Mostly just because I haven't thought of a better abbreviation that I recognize. But again, name it whatever, as long as you could recognize it. It's consistent with whatever you're doing. The naming convention doesn't particularly matter unless your engine depends on it in some way. Okay, so we've got 2 points here that allow us to start to move the back. And what we're going to do is we're going to build some controls to drive those clusters and move our joints around. What you may notice here is if I come in here and try to move the base of this, I can't rotate it either. Only the cluster can move it around right now. So if I grab this hip cluster, it'll move that point around, but I can't translate it anymore, which not so great. But if I parent it under a free joint, actually no, I need to move it with a cluster. I could at least start to rotate this and turn off my discrete rotate. I can't translate the upper ones, but I can rotate them now, where I couldn't do that before. And we'll get that in a second, because once you add an Ik spline to something, you no longer control twisting, which is kind of important motion for the upper body and lower body. So let's go build our controls real quick. So I'll do this one with you guys watching in this case. I'm going to build a... No, I'm not going to build a cube. I already built a cube. Steal one of my other controls. So I'm switching back over to my FK control. I'm just going to duplicate this. Why build the same thing twice? So duplicated it. I'm zeroing it out so it's back here at the origin. And I'm going to open up my outliner and rename it. I guess I really didn't have to zero it out, but just so I know where it is. CL hips, and copy that. Okay, so I got my hip control, and I'm going to make another one, so I'm duplicating it, and I'll call this my chest control. And I'll reshape this here in a second. Just going to get them named real quick. Okay, so let's start with the hip, and in this case I'm going to actually point snap it to, so again I'm just holding V, I had it selected down here, hold down V, middle mouse click, it drags it up there. And just want it oriented this way, I want it facing with the world. That is fine. I'm going to turn my mesh back on, and I'm going to scale the actual control up, not the group, the control. And whatever these changes are I make, I will freeze the transformations. I want something I could freely see around the body, so I'm going to, but I also want to notice the hips. Oops. I got miscellaneous on, so I'm grabbing the LRA of the object instead of the CVs, so I turn that back off. Now I can scale. So, and I gotta remember that I have clothing for this guy, so I gotta make sure that this box fits around his clothing too. This a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm just gonna change the shape a little bit more to make it a little bit more unique for the hips. And I think I'm happy with that, maybe just a little bit wider. Yeah, no real rhyme or reason to this, just something visually easy to look at, easy to grab from any angle, easy to tell that it's the hips and not one of the other controllers. It's not intercolliding with the other controls too much. There's not so much happening on it that it's hard to tell one control from another if they all start to clutter up. Just kind of little design elements to make this easy to grab, easy to work with, easy to identify. Alright, so that's the hips, and I'll go get my chest one now. And I'll try point snapping it, turn off my geometry again. There, and well, let me make it bigger first, and then I'll decide if I'm happy with the position. Because we're going to drive this with the clusters, the pivot point of this control, well, here, let me bring the box open first so you can kind of get the idea of where I'm going with this before I start explaining it. Okay, turn back on my geometry. Alright, so ideally I want this pivot point for the chest to be wherever I want to be able to bend the chest, move the chest from, and I actually think I want it up a little bit higher. It doesn't need to actually be on the skeleton in this case. The hips it's probably best if you do, but the upper chest not as much. So I think that's probably where I want the bend from. I definitely want it right in the center, from left to right, but front and back, not so worried, not too worried if it's on the skeleton or not. It's just, where do I want him to bend from? When I do this motion, where do I want that rotation to happen? Do I want it to happen here? Do I want to have it happen more back here? And I think I want it a little bit more forward, but I think I'm happy with that position. I think that's low enough. It's under the clavicle. Right now I'm not looking at the box. I'm just looking at the pivot point. That's why I have the group selected. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. And just spend a little bit of time thinking about it, because it's, again, kind of like carpentry. It's instead of cut, it's measure twice, place once. Just really check it out and think about that as you're placing it. So again, I'm just going to kind of, let's see, well, what's first? I don't want it out that much, and make it a little bit wider, and okay, do shoulders wider. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna make this thing overall taller because I don't want it right on top of the clavicle control. If they're inside this control, that's fine. I just don't want the lines competing so much. Okay, so bring that in just a little bit. And again, this is just me going like, what shape do I like the most? Does this look okay? Do I feel like I can grab everything else that I've got here so far? And then I go, yeah, I'm happy with that, and then that's where I stop. And if you're new to this, try stuff. You'll figure out what shapes work for you, which don't. Especially as you start animating, you'll go like, that control's really cool at first, and then you'll go like, oh, here's why it's not good, because it clashes with this or that. So it's always sort of an experimental process. This is again kind of the one art to building a rig, is trying to figure out where to place the controls and where you're happy with them. So let's see. Let's make sure I've got both my splines zeroed out now after scaling them. Modify freeze transformations. Okay, so those can both be zeroed out. I'm happy with the pivot points. The pivot point of the group and the control are in the same spot in each case. I didn't accidentally move one from the other. Okay, there's my chest control, there's my hip control. And let's have it drive the stuff we want it to drive. So let's start with the chest. The chest, I'm going to select the chest control first. I'm going to control click the chest cluster in my outliner. Constrain parent. And I'm going to do the same thing for the hips now. And grab the hip cluster and hit G, do the last command, constrain parent, and now it's controlling that cluster. So it's moving the base of our spine, but you'll notice that point there is still staying. So I'm going to go ahead and parent that to the hip control also. So I'm grabbing hip control, that joint, shift clicking in this case because I'm in my work view, constrain parent, and now that's also coming with. So now we get a little bit more, the whole spine moving together. So right now I could twist, but what's going on is, so kind of watch the neck. In the neck we didn't add any IK to. It's just kind of the child on the end of this. When I rotate the base of the hips, notice how the top's rotating. So everything's staying on the spline, but it's all twisting while staying in place, which is not going to be a great motion, and really we want the chest to stay in place when we're twisting the hips and vice versa. And you'll notice right now we don't have any twisting happening on the neck. So just in case you can't see it, notice the angle is changing as I rotate it here, and when I rotate it up here, it's moving left and right as the curve from the cluster is moving side to side from it being rotated, but the actual rotation of the spine is staying the same. So that's not exactly what we want. We want to be able to twist back and forth, and we don't want those weird motions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the Ik Spline, hit Control A, and bring open the attribute editor. And so it will start up here. You want to come down here. I don't think it's Ik Solver. It's just, no, it is under Ik Solvers. Okay, Ik Solvers, and then you want Advanced Twist Controls. And we're going to turn this on. Alright, so let me undo that. So you watch as soon as I do this. As soon as I do it, you're going to see the neck rotate. Alright, so why is it rotating? Because this is world up type is seen up positive Y. Let me turn that back off so I could point out what's going on here. So I'm going to turn off polygons and look at our spine one more time and point out what's what. So as far as what's forward backward, or technically up, as long as far as the chain goes, Z is facing up, not Y. Y is off to the side. So what's going on here when we're in here and we turn this on? It's saying Y is up, so it's rotated everything so Y is facing that way. So if we go look at our LRAs now, I think it'll show it. Oh, well, they're facing that way and that way. So they've even gone two ways. So that's even worse. We've split our spine in half. So half our body would be facing this way and half our body would be facing that way. That's bad. But we can fix that. So let's go back in here. And we know we want Z to be that. But rather than scene up, we're going to go world up type, object rotation up, start and end. Okay. So it's not positive Y, it's actually positive Z. And up vector 1 and up vector 2, these positions stands for X, Y, and Z. And so it's still set in Y here and Y here. So I'm going to actually go and change this to 0 and change Z to 1. And I think that twisted it backwards, but I'm going to add my objects in and see if that's right. It might be negative Z. I'm kind of guessing until I plug everything in here, and then we'll go and tweak it. Alright, so this is the start, this is the end, so actually I can't recall which control I just grabbed. So I'm going to start with the hips, because that's the start of the chain. I'm going to copy the name for the hips, if I could remember what it was, and I'm sure I'm going to type it in the same way. I could just type it in, but I'm going to copy and paste just to be safe, so I don't make a typo. And paste it in. Also, this is a good case for why you always need unique control names. If there was 2 CL hip controls or 2 CL chest controls or whatever you name your parts, it would not be able to identify which is which, and then this wouldn't work. But in this case we have, so it should be working. So let me see what's going on here. And alright, so I don't think it's positive Z, I think we need negative Z. So let's try that and see if that looks better. Negative Z, and then change those to negative. Maybe I need one positive, and one negative. We'll see. No, that flipped me back around. So maybe I just do want those 1 and 1. Because that looked right the first time. Okay, that looks how we had our spine before. So I think we're happy with this. Let's see, how am I going to show this to you? Let me make some locators. This is because I don't have anything skinned yet, so it's really kind of hard to see twisting in here. So this is not a step for making your rig. This is just for the sake of showing you, so you don't have to follow along this part. You can just watch. I'm going to go ahead and save my scene right here, actually, too. So I'm going to go create locator, and I know it's at the origin. It's selected, and I'm just going to point snap it up to the base of the spine here. Going to go ahead and scale it up a little bit, and I'm just going to duplicate it, and whoops, hit W so I'm on move, and I'm just going to point snap it up to each joint. So duplicate, move it up to the next joint, duplicate up to the next joint, duplicate up to the next joint, and then for now I'm just going to parent them under these joints. So the only reason I'm doing this is just so you have something to see the orientation of the joints as they're twisting. I'll switch colors here because I have no idea how well this is going to show up on YouTube. Give you something with a little bit more contrast here in a second. Okay, I'm going to hit Alt B to change my background color. Okay, that's probably got the most contrast. And so now that I've set this up, so I've set up. I'm hitting again Control A here to bring open the attribute editor. Enable twist, rotation, object rotation up, start and end, negative Z, and then I've got these two set to 1, and then name the start control and control for this rig. And let's see if I did this in the right order. So start twisting. All right, that looks good. So notice now I'm able to twist the hips, and the upper body is not really moving. That's what we want. And let's see, I'm going to undo that motion, and let's try the chest. That's what we're looking for. So the chest is coming, hips are staying behind. That's the type of motion we're looking for. So let's look at this with the polygons on. I'm going to go to X-ray mode here and turn this extra clothing off, and just make sure I'm happy with the twist. And I think where this fall off is happening, it's fine. It's just under the rib cage. It looks like this is about 50% of the twisting. I think this will end up being okay. So that's the spine. So the last thing we're going to do is put it all back together. And I'm going to parent the head. Let me hide my polygons. Put the head back on. I'm going to parent the arms back to the chest here. And parent the legs back to the hip. And now you can start to see how the legs and stuff will move with the body. So if I start to rotate the hips, you can see the legs are going with. If I move the hips, the arms stay in place. You notice one arm's bending, one's not. That's because this one's an IK, this one's an FK. And you start to see how our rig's working out. Okay, so actually there's one more thing I'm going to do. I'm going to build one more control. So for the most part the rig's done. I'm just going to put another control in here because I want something that lets me move the upper body and the lower body at the same time and be able to rotate them, because right now if I grab both and rotate them, they're just going to both bend in place, which isn't really what I want. I want something that lets me bend the whole upper body over. I'll get a little bit fancier here. Let's see. Make a cylinder here. Oh, I need to turn polygons back on if I want to see any of this. Turn off X-ray. And I'm just going to go ahead and hide this. Or, not hide this, but so I'm hitting Alt-H, so I'm hiding everything else but this. And let me see if I have enough edges to do what I want to do. So I'm editing the height here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we're going to call, I think I got enough edges for this. So, sorry, counting in my head. Nope, I need to add some more subdivisions. Let's see, 26, is that right? I'm trying to get it so I could alternate every other edge here. I think 26 is what I need if I recall. This is more me just trying to remember what I usually do when I build this particular control. Let's see, yeah, I need to extrude first. So I'm going into component mode, and this is me just building a custom shape for this control. Oh, I think I was wrong. I don't think I'm going to alternate. Oh, no, I was right. Okay, good. 26. Okay, so it's every other edge, and what I'm going to do is extrude those. So I'm going to go back to my modeling set. And again, everything I'm doing here is no real purpose. This is just me getting fancy. And scale those down a little bit. And we'll call that good enough. I think usually actually when I do this, I grab 2, skip 1, 2, skip 1. It gets a little bit nicer shape, but whatever. You guys really aren't here to watch me build fancy custom controls, I'm guessing. You guys can figure this stuff out in your own time, and it doesn't really mean anything. So really all I'm doing here is building kind of this gear shape, and the reason I do this is because the control that I use to drive the upper and lower body at the same time, I refer to this as center of gravity, which I abbreviate to cog. So this is my cog, and so I'm going to hold down V and just start point snapping as I go around this thing. Everybody having fun yet? Okay, so there's my NURB shape, and the only thing extra I'm going to do is, I think what I might do is I might build an arrow into this so I can kind of get an idea of which way's forward if I'm rotating this thing. So, well, I don't think I really need that because I always use my move tool. That's me just trying to overthink this too much. You know, there's that saying, "Kiss, keep it simple, stupid." Probably good advice. So I'm going to unhide everything I had before. So I've got this really teeny tiny controller now, and make it bigger so it gets around the hips. I'm going to go ahead and translate it up to the hips, the same pivot point that I gave the hips. Okay, I just want to make sure it's a little bit bigger than that hip control, but that's probably fine. Okay, so I'm going to name this CL center of gravity for short, and CL center of gravity underscore CT group, CTGRP. Alright, I'm going to freeze transformations on my controls so it's not scaled up. And that should be my placement. So I'm just going to grab, I can either grab them in here or in my work scene. So what I'm going to do is just grab the hip and the chest controller, pick walk up. That way I have the CT groups. I'm going to shift click my cog and parent them under there. So what you see is just these two controls are parented under this control. So now when I rotate this one, I can move the whole rig down when I want. And don't sweat the arms yet. There's still stuff we can do with those, but part of it is just the IK is still showing in cases. So we'll do some stuff with orientation a little bit after that as we clean up our rig. But that's our Ik spline now. So we've got that. We've got twisting. So there's just a few things left in this. We still got the hands to do. We still got the face and head to do. And then we have to kind of put all these different pieces together because the way they're floating about now isn't quite going to work so hot. But there'll be a video on assembling all this stuff and trying to organize it eventually. So I'm going to go ahead and turn back on my FK just so everything's nice and even here. But that's it. So we've got an Ik spline, Ik spline driving our Ik spine in here. We're driving the spline that was actually made with clusters. We drive the clusters with the actual controls, and then we still have the hips down here that allow us to rotate everything when we're twisting it. Let me just double check that works. Yeah, everything's going. That's what I'm expecting. And then both these controls are parented under the center of gravity here to twist everything and move everything as a whole. So there you have it, an Ik spine. So you could build this way. You could build an FK rig. You could build both and do a switch like we've done on the arm. There's no reason you can do it for the leg, no reason you can do it for the back. This is just a different type of control, and since we covered FK in the arm, you can watch that video, get the gist of that, and should be able to apply the same concept to here. And if not there, I think we'll have some more FK controls in the face. So FK is pretty easy though, so we don't go a whole lot into it. It's the fancier stuff. So there you have it. See you next lesson, and hope you got something out of this. Thanks.